let's step through this just a little bit. So when we talk about building a panorama, what do we have to do? Well, we're going to have to sort of align our pictures in order to be able to paste them together. That's what we just saw. So to do that, here's the basic process. The first thing we do is we're going to detect some features, okay? And here features just mean some interesting points. In fact, we're going to define something called an interest point operator that'll find some points that we define to be interesting. Don't you wish you had an interesting person operator? You could just scan it around a room and it would just tell you who's interesting. It wouldn't go off a lot in my house. Anyway. No, sorry, hon. So here we've detected a bunch of points in both images, and these are going to be our feature points. The next thing we have to do, and you know, just looking at this, it looks a little bit like a mess. We need to find the corresponding pairs. That tells us how we need to transform one image to the next. And then we can use those pairs to align the images. And if we do them in this particular example, you get something that looks like this. By the way, the seam has been left in here just to make it clear how that image is being moved. If you were actually splicing these images together, you would do something, you know, sexy in order to make sure that those seams became invisible. Now, to do this detection and matching and alignment, there are a couple of things that we have to worry about. The first problem is, well, I can't possibly match points if I don't find them in both images. And remember, I'm going to detect interest points here and interesting points there and look for a match. So it better be the case that a point that's been found here to be interesting is also found over there. In this particular case, there would be no chance to match because I found some set of 4 points on the left and a different set of 4 points on the right. So what we need is what's referred to as a repeatable detector. If I run on this image, most of the points that I find over here as being interesting, I will also find over there, and vice versa. So that's the first problem, reliably finding them at all. The second problem is, let's assume that these points on the left are somewhere in the right. So I found here it's 4 points on the left, and then there's 4 points on the right. Which point is which? Okay, I have to do the match. The way we do that is what's referred to as using a descriptor. A descriptor is just what it sounds like. It's a description of a point, or of a feature to be precise. What I want are distinctive descriptors. That is, you know, if I write down the description of each of these, so you can think of the description as being the name, right? So I want this one to be Bob, Ted, Alice, and George. That's mixing some metaphors from the 60s, by the way. Because if they all said George, 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 and this one says George, then I've got a French movie and I don't know what's going anywhere, okay? But if this one says Edward, it better be that one of these things says Edward. Maybe if it just says Ed, I'll be okay. But my descriptor can't change that much of the same point in the two images. So that's what we talk about it being distinctive, you know, Bob, Carol, Ted, and Alice, that's who it was from the movie, right? They have different names, but they also have to be reliable. So Ed might become Edward, but Ed doesn't become Francesca, all right? So feature points are used for all sorts of operations in computer vision. Image alignment, we talked a lot about. 3D reconstruction, motion tracking. I'm trying to figure out how either the object's moving or the camera. Object recognition, in fact, in a couple lectures from now, we're going to take some features from a bunch of different objects, take the features in our image, and figure out, oh, it's this object that's in that image. All right? Database, indexing, robot. Features are used for all sorts of things, and that's one of the reasons why we have to talk about them in the class.